Hello everyone, and welcome once again to Caleb Likes Books. Today I have another book review for you, which is for Star Wars: The High Republic Cataclysm by Lydia Kang. This is the second adult novel in the High Republic Phase 2, and I was really looking forward to reading this one because it has been over a year since I read a High Republic book last, which was Convergence, back in like April-ish of 2023. And I've kind of fallen behind on the High Republic, in case it's not obvious. And so I was really looking forward to continuing it with this book, and really hoping I would enjoy this one. For my brief thoughts on the couple other Phase 2 books that I read, I really enjoyed Path of Deceit quite a bit. That was the first of the young adult books in Phase 2. And then Convergence I thought was a little underwhelming. I thought it was good, but it didn't quite land for me the same way as a lot of the Phase 1 books did. All of which, in terms of the adult novel, I absolutely loved. And I enjoyed the young adult books quite a good bit as well. And so I was really looking forward to this one and saying, hopefully I really like this one a lot, because I had kind of fallen out of interest with Phase 2. And even now I still, Phase 2 is cool, but I really want to get back to Phase 1 and Phase 3 and things like that. So I'm really looking forward to getting further into the series. But I was really hoping that this would kind of turn Phase 2 around for me, taking it more from something that I just don't really care about to something that maybe I don't like as much as the Phase 1 and Phase 3 storyline, but something that I'm still interested in and excited about. And I'm happy to say that is the case. I think this is probably my favorite of the 3 Phase 2 novels that I have read so far. Definite step up from Convergence for me. I think I had a great time with this one. So to start off with some positives, which is the majority of what I have to say about this book. First of all, I really liked the plot of this book, and kind of going off of that, I was always consistently really interested in what was going on in this book. I loved a lot of the setups in this book. It kind of builds very nicely off of Convergence, as well as the Battle of Jedha, which I didn't read, but this book I think fills in enough of the gaps that you can follow what's going on if you haven't read Battle of Jedha, because that's like an audio drama type thing, which is technically part of the adult novels, but it's also kind of separate. But this builds on those with the 2 planets of Iram and Irono. Don't know if I'm saying those the right way or not, but we'll go with it. And those planets were kind of like bitter rivals that were like constantly opposed to each other, and then ended up going to war against each other and things like that. And this book kind of picks up where they are trying to kind of work out a peace type of thing, and things kind of go from there. And things kind of don't go very well with that, due to the events of Battle of Jedha and things like that. And I loved that setup. I think the idea of these 2 planets that are like directly next to each other and so kind of have to be involved with one another in some way, but are also opposed in many ways is very interesting. And the setup of that, where you have the marriage between these 2 people, one from each planet, and trying to use that as a way to attempt to start unifying these planets, was really interesting. And things like that, and that being kind of the catalyst for everything going on, and things progressing from there, I thought was really interesting. And as far as other stuff, I really enjoyed the involvement of the other groups in this. You have the Jedi going to be involved in this. You have the Path of the Open Hand being involved in this. And I really like the way that each of these groups kind of gets involved into this conflict, with the Path of the Open Hand kind of trying to push these 2 planets into being further into conflict with one another, and then also having the Jedi come in to try to evade that conflict and things like that was really interesting. And having all these different groups coming together was really cool. And I liked how these groups themselves were portrayed as well. I think the Jedi were interesting in this book. I especially really like the Path of the Open Hand. I still think that their portrayal in Path of Deceit is my personal favorite out of Phase 2, as far as like how much into the Path of the Open Hand you get. But I really enjoy them as a group, and I'm really interested in them and things like that, and how they kind of lead into later on becoming like the Nile in Phase 1. And that's all really well done, really fantastic. I also rather enjoyed the characters in this one. The first book, Convergence, I thought didn't really do a lot for me, either on the character front or the plot. In terms of characters, there was only like maybe one or two standouts for me. Whereas in this book, I enjoyed most of the characters quite a bit, especially my favorite from Convergence as well, which is Axel Greylark, who is the character on the cover of the book, who is the son of one of the chancellors. There's two chancellors of the Republic at the time of Phase 2, and he is the child of one of them, but he's kind of rebellious and not doing necessarily the things that his mother wants him to do. And I really like him as a character, how he involves himself with the path, how he is also involved with the Jedi, how he's involved with the Republic by nature of his family and things like that. And he's just a very interesting and complex character that I really enjoy, both in this book and Convergence. I really liked him in this book a lot. And despite Convergence not quite doing a huge amount for me, I really enjoyed seeing the resolution to his arc that was continued from that book. And I thought he was a great character. I really enjoyed him in this book. I also enjoyed a lot of the other characters. You have Gela, who's also from the other book, who's good in here, and the Chancellor Greylark, whose first name I'm forgetting. I think it's Keong or something like that. She's great. Really liked her. I loved the couple, the one of each person from the two opposed planets. I really enjoyed them and their dynamic that they had and what they were trying to do to kind of figure everything out together. And just all that stuff. A lot of good character work in here. And all the characters, even if I didn't absolutely adore the characters themselves, I enjoyed all the dynamics that they had and the roles that they portrayed and things like that. Just the way that everything with the characters was done, I thought was really well done. I also just had a great time reading this book in general. I had a great time with it. I had, like, everything that was going on was interesting. I was always invested in it. I always wanted to see where things were going to go next. This book, to me, almost struck me as being similar in a way to something like The Rising Storm from Phase 1, even though, that's kind of the middle part in some ways of a trilogy, whereas this is, the second book of two. Or three if you want to include Battle of Jeddah. It felt similar to me in that way, where you see things in the beginning, like you can see the conflict brewing, and then things just kind of build and build and build and get bigger and bigger, to the point where at the very end of this book you have this massive battle going on that's really exciting and fun and interesting, and things like that. And I really liked that about this book as well. To name one final thing that I liked in this book, I really liked the way that the Nameless were handled. The Nameless, to me, is one of, if not the most interesting things that the High Republic is doing in terms of the books. I absolutely love the Nameless. I think they are such a fascinating idea, and one of my favorite new villains in Star Wars in terms of the grand scheme of like the Disney era of Star Wars, or Star Wars in general, really. And I really like the way that it was handled in this book specifically. Very mysterious, very kind of, you don't see too much of them, but what you do see of them has an impact, which I really enjoyed. As far as stuff that I didn't like as much in this book, the main thing for me is the characters, which I know I just said I enjoyed all of them, and I did, but there were only really the few standouts, even though I think there were more standouts in this book than there were in Convergence. I think that for me, the plot was much more interesting than most of the characters in this book. Like, the plot was what really kept me going. The characters, I really liked Axel, really liked his mother, really liked a couple of the other characters, but that was really it. There's a lot of other Jedi characters and a lot of other Republic characters, a lot of other Path of the Open Hand characters, and things like that. There's just a lot of characters going on in this book, and none of them really stuck out to me all that much. I enjoyed all of them, but they didn't quite land for me in the same way as standouts like Axel did, or like the Chancellor did, or things like that. But I think they're all well done still. It's just this book for me, in terms of enjoyment, was super, super high on the plot axis, and still decent, but not nearly as high on the character axis, if that makes sense. So good stuff still, but was not quite as invested in the characters, which for me is an important thing. I like, I'm very much a character reader when it comes to books or storytelling in general. I really like characters, and so, only having the one or two standouts is a point to me that sticks out. but they were still well done, so it wasn't a huge issue. Overall, I really enjoyed this book a lot. I would say that I enjoyed it more than I expected to, and just as much as I hoped to, if that makes sense. Like, I really wanted to love this book because I really wanted there to be a Phase 2 book that really stuck the landing for me, and even though I enjoyed Path of Deceit quite a bit, as time has gone on, it's kind of lost a little bit for me in hindsight. And even though I still acknowledge it as a good book, it just doesn't have the same impact for me as a lot of the Phase 1 books did. And obviously, as I already mentioned, Convergence didn't really leave a huge impact on me either. And so I was really hoping that I would love this book, but I was still kind of expecting, like, oh, it's still Phase 2, it's not something I'm super into. You know, I expect I'll probably enjoy it, but I probably will enjoy it more than Convergence, because that seems to be the general opinion. But it probably won't still reach the heights of Phase 1 for me. But I enjoyed it even more than that, and I think that this definitely did leave an impact and will continue to, and will, unless Path of Vengeance happens to outdo this book somehow, which maybe it will. Cavan Scott's the one who wrote it, and I loved his book, The Rising Storm. I think this, unless that book overtakes it, this will be the standout of Phase 2 for me. And if I also love that book, then that'll be awesome too. But I'm glad that there's at least one Phase 2 book that I absolutely loved. So that is very good, I think. So as far as a rating out of 10 that I would give this book, I'd give it a 9 out of 10. Really enjoyed it a lot, just had such a blast reading it. I was always just engaged in it. It was always something exciting going on, and I just had a great time reading it. I really enjoyed it a lot. So that's pretty much it for this video. Let me know in the comments if you have read Cataclysm and what you thought of it. If so, if you prefer this book over Convergence, or maybe if you like Convergence more, what's your kind of thoughts on that, or things like that, how you think it compares, how you think it compares to the other books in Phase 1, all that kind of stuff, let me know in the comments. So that's pretty much it for this video. So thank you all for watching, and I will see you all next time.